Are we on air?
We are now on air. I'm glad that's the first thing they'll hear. Welcome everyone to the Survivor Maryland pre-finale live show. There is no finale tonight. It'll be next week. I'm sorry. I'm not. It takes a while for it to be as bad as it is. But I have some special guests joining me tonight. We're gonna start with, in alphabetical order, my favorite people. So Akshay, introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself. Tell us how much you love Survivor Maryland.
Yeah, so my name is Akshay. I'm from Survivor Michigan Season 1. Finale this Friday, everybody watch. And then before I watched Michigan, I got ready by watching Survivor Maryland. And it's super hype. Anders, you're doing an amazing job in your first season. And I'm actually from the DMV area. My mom went to Maryland, so I got a special connection there, and I love it.
God, Akshay's the best. All right, Bailey.
Wow, nothing else. Okay, that is quite an introduction. Hi, I'm Bailey. I live in the Washington D.C. area, but I'm not from. I did not go to Maryland. I just enjoy the show because I'm a super fan and I'm a freaking nerd. I forced my ex-boyfriend to watch seasons 3 and 5, and we both obsessed over Victoria. So yeah, and this season has been to the standard I expected from
Wow,
him.
you really too much praise, honestly.
And I don't want to layer it on too thick. Just want to make sure. I want to keep you humble, Anders.
I appreciate it. Next, we have my absolute favorite person in the world, just the best guy, Josh.
What's it make me big? What's up? I'm Josh. I'm a friend of Anders from high school. I am originally from the Jersey Shore, or as I like to call it, or the DMV. I go to school in Boston now.
And you're a Maryland super fan, and I think you just froze.
For Survivor Maryland, but Anders is doing a job with it. I'm really excited to delve into some stuff here. So, yeah.
And then we finally have, one of my residents from last year and a current Maryland student, Mr. Zachary. Oh, you're not, I can't hear you. There's no mic going. He's one of my residents, but I didn't say he was one of the smart ones. All right. We'll get to his introductions once he plugged into his headphones, but I guess we'll start. Oh, there you are. No, we can hear you, Zach. We can hear you now.
Can Zach not hear us? Zach, oh my God. Zach, sweetie.
How's that work?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, that's good now. So I can introduce myself?
Yes.
All right, I'm Zach. I'm from New York, but I go to Maryland. My joy, first day seeing my RA, was the president and host of the Survivor Club, Anders Norberg. So I was on crew, then I played, back on crew. Happy to be here.
Love it. See, I'm great with kids. Zach loves me, right, Zach?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Well, I'll take it. So let's talk about it. We are now coming in on the finale. We have 4 players left, all female. What are your takes? How do you guys feel about Emily, Faith, Alex, and Susan? Like, is this the 4 we expected? Are we happy with this? Are we unhappy? Who should be here and isn't?
I'm very happy with this 4. This is a fantastic Final 4. Girl power all the way. I think a lot of people saw maybe Alex and Faith were definitely going to be here. And then Emily came on really strong second half of the game. Susan almost fell off the second half of the game and just kind of almost feels like she got carried here a little bit. But either way, like, they each had very different strong parts of their game, and I'm really happy that this is the Final 4 we get to see.
I think even more amazing is that 3 out of the 4 people in the Final 4 are ferocity. The fact that we got to the end and we got to the swap with 6 people, lost 1 more, and then yet 3 out of the 4 have ended up being Ferocity is incredible. That's the best part about a oolong is when that tribe, the decimated tribe, comes back and then takes it into the end game. It really proves that just because you lose in the beginning doesn't mean you're going to lose at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that you have 4 players in the end that actually really deserve to be there, which that doesn't always happen. I think, kudos to Alex being able to kind of switch over from Dylan's side and make great relationships with these girls who have really been like running the game and deciding every vote. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
I've been Team Alex since day one. There's something about Alex where her gameplay's been, really good. I think she's made like solid connections with everyone she's interacted with. I think Emily and Faith, people kind of saw as a power duo that would probably make it to the end, but Susan started off the game really strong, and then I think she had like a kind of a long lull. At least that's what I got from her throughout most of the game, and then it's now coming back really strong with her new relationship with Emily. I think Emily kind of brought her back to the forefront of the competition, so I'm excited to see if she will live up to that hype that she's kind of created for herself.
I love how Anders was just like, there's final 4 women. Let's make sure there's 4 guys on this podcast with me today.
Yeah.
Look, I have made it very clear. If any girl wants to be on these, please let me know.
My mom loves the show.
Yeah,
Wow.
if your mom wants to do it, let me know.
Anders, you're gay, and that sounded so thirsty and desperate.
Hey, any
That's what my roommate
ladies?
and I'll be right back.
Hey, any hot singles looking to come on this podcast? Just let me know. Or anyone really. Because I had to invite Bailey, and it's like, ugh.
I stayed up for you.
I know. I appreciate it. I'm sorry this is so late, guys. Living on the West Coast is hard because I got home late for the East.
Sorry, before you move forward, I did want to add, she was Team Alex. I was Team Emily from the jump. Like, the moment that I saw Emily, I was like, winner potential right there. She has not played a game that has started at the merge. She's been playing since the beginning. She was able to get past the almost rock draw. She was able to get through the decimation of Ferocity, and then she was able to navigate a tribe swap where she fought from the bottom of the pack with numbers. She has played a consistent game since the beginning, and I think that needs to be noted. And honestly, she's probably the most deserving to win the title at this point. IMO.
So I think it is interesting. We have these 4 girls. We have the duo that's been called out since forever, too many times, of Emily and Faith, where there was really no momentum against them until maybe Danielle and Michael, but and then you have Alex, who from day one, I think people were pegging as like, she's a strong player, she could win. Like, you heard Kevel and Dylan singing her praises. And then you have Susan, who, although not the same as them, was very much in power for a good portion of the game, and then at merge, lost a lot. So I think the first thing to say about this is, what did we think the stories are with these players? Like, what are their stories to win? Because I know we said that all 4 could win, but what are their stories? Like, what's the story for Alex? What's the story for Emily, Faith, Susan? Is there anyone whose story is just not that good, and honestly, if they won, you would be disappointed?
I could see Faith's story being a little bit weaker than the other 3. Maybe that's just personal bias, but the sorority freshman who I don't know, just seems very popular compared to the other girls who Emily talked about, personal struggles and just really wanting to come out and win and show that she could do this. And I feel like the other 2 as well had more had things that made me personally empathize with them more. I haven't really seen as much of that from Faith, but maybe she'll surprise us.
I don't know.
I think Alex is, her game is all about adaptability. I don't think I ever really knew who Alex was fully aligned with from the beginning of the season to the end. She was ready to jump ship. She was always ready to do something different, try something new. And it really, allegiance never mattered. And she was just like, this is what I need to do to get further in the game. But she ultimately had enough of a social game that those people that she had just betrayed were willing to come back. And I think that she has a powerhouse story going into the final tribal council if she makes it there, saying, I was able to try different things and new things, and I win against people, and but I made it work, and I got to this point because of it. So I think that she has a great chance because of that alone too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that if anyone would be disappointed, I think it's not how you start, it's how you finish for sure. And I think Susan's easily had the weakest finish because once she lost Tony and then Swale, she kind of took a huge back seat and was just like, you know what, like let it go, let the big guns go at each other, and just kind of felt like she did nothing. And going into this finale, it seems like Emily kind of carried her there. It was Emily's move that got Susan there. So if Susan does win, I will be slightly disappointed unless she can make some big moves in this finale.
Yeah.
So
Oh, go ahead.
I think Susan kind of burned out a bit because this is like a 90-day game. So I feel like you lose some allies, you're mid-merge. It's kind of tough to keep the pace. I agree with Bailey. I've been really impressed with Alex. The way like Dylan has been quite the sinking ship, and she really like jumped over that very deftly, and now is working with the girls. And Emily, yeah, I agree. She had nice personal content where she was talking about how she hasn't done anything outside dietitian or whatever, and it's her last semester. So I think she definitely has a great story coming in.
I mean,
I
Emily
think
also.
Tony back for,
Oh, go ahead, John.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say we do a Tipsy Tribal Part 2. Bring it back for like the for the final tribal count. I don't know. That's just what
Yeah.
I have to say.
Hours.
So I think there is something to say about. Clearly, there are people who are power players at certain parts of the game, and there are people who weren't so much. I think it's easy to see, Faith early on, she made the power move of flipping on her alliance, and then she and Emily flipped again on their alliance to solidify a 6 rather than a 4. You have Alex making the big move at the merge to somehow keep Dylan at a 9-2 minority. And I think big moves are important, but I think we've seen not only in Survivor Maryland several times, but also in real Survivor and CBS Survivor, like you don't have to make big moves to win. In fact, sometimes the people who make the big moves lose because of it. So do you think that Susan could potentially win because of that? Do you think that Susan's ability to somehow stay alive without being the mastermind, is that an effective strategy? Do you think that would work with this jury?
I mean, I just don't think there's enough time left because I feel like she's in the final 4 with 3 people who probably would beat her. So I think if there were like more time and it was like final 7, 8, and she started making more moves or like continuing the pace that she was at, then I think definitely. But I'm not sure if there's any moves she can make at final 4 that can get her to the end against people that she could beat.
It's going to depend on the bitterness of the jury. If the jury is angry at anybody else that's sitting next to her, maybe Susan gets a plurality. Maybe she ends up getting more votes than normal. But ultimately, it's like, even especially, God, please remind me, but I believe that Susan had an idol played on her at this final 5 tribal.
Yes. It was an idol on her and an idol on Emily.
Yeah. So even like Emily is just throwing. And I read in the subtext of the show that something was happening in Susan's personal life that detracted her from the game. Which, if that's true or not, whatever. But it's gonna be very hard for her to come back from that. I don't think that she has the opportunity. She has enough time to jump onto a big move train. That train left with Daniela or with Dawn or with Michael even. Doing something would have been better than doing nothing. And ultimately, I don't think that she has enough time to save face with that.
I think that in College Survivors, we've seen like almost a history of bitter jurors. I think the more personal feeling of College Survivor, there's like, especially Maryland season 4, I feel like almost everyone on that jury was bitter. But especially this season, I feel like almost the entire final 4 is like really liked by everyone else. Like I think Faith, Emily, and Alex are just really loved like a ton. So I think if it comes down to like most likable, which it can sometimes, Susan can't even win that just because the other three have so much love. And then if it comes to who's played the best game, Susan's not going to win that. So
I mean,
sounds like I'm shitting on Susan a lot. I really like her, but
Emily, Faith, and Alex ingrained themselves so much into the game. That final seven circle of rumors that happened, the only person that wasn't in that circle was Susan, because Susan wasn't a part of the game, really, as much as she could have. And I think that that's definitely going to that's going to show, because that circle, like, Survivor's a circle of relationships. It's who you know, who you trusted, even if you send them back to the jury. So that's going to definitely come back into play, and I don't think Susan's going to be able to save herself from that.
And I think you make a point with that, in that relationships, the connections they made, who they trust. But you have seen these blindsides occur, and you have seen these strong, in the same way that Akshay talked about college, especially these intertwined sort of. It's hard to separate the game from the people because you see them all the time. They may be your roommate, but in this instance, you saw how Swally and Faith thought. You saw how Danielle and Michael felt about Alex. You saw that Emily, Faith, and Susan betrayed Kevel. You saw the way that Dylan and Alex were close, and he was pissed that Emily and Faith didn't let him in on the Kevel vote. Like, these players have shown that there's like, they didn't enjoy the majority as they were. And I think, there is potential for this bitterness to arise. Potentially. I'm saying that you've seen these moments. It could happen. Do you think that, like, if you were in this game and you had been in alliance with Emily, Faith, Alex, and they had done these moves on you, would that be a legitimate way to feel like, okay, they betrayed me, I'm going to look past the game and look into the personal?
Personally, I'm big into like voting people for the game. Like that was just always my thing. Like look past emotions and like who played the best moves. But I agree. Like relationships and the game like bleed so heavily because you're like spending a semester with these people on the same campus. Like you could be hanging out, like going to things together, and it's like not like 39 days where you're all over the place. So I think people tend to definitely internalize, blindsides more than it would have been if you're actually playing for $1 million on an island.
But I do think, like, I think the idea of a bitter jury exists, and I think that is something that is part of the game. However, the way that this game was played this season, in my opinion, was a lot more strategic focused. You're seeing people splitting votes. You're seeing people jump from ship to ship, from group to group, trust cluster to trust cluster, trying to find somebody and to stick with. And the game was super fluid, and I think that that's a sign of people who are gamers and people who appreciate a game. There wasn't a whole lot of, oh, but I'm friends with them, I need to stick with them. I think the only one was Emily and Faith, and they openly talk about how they were like, well, it's just been beneficial for us to stick together, so that's what we've done. Like, I think that at the end of the day, I don't think this is going to be a season 4 where everyone's just like lining them up, the firing squad, ready to roast the fuck out of the jury. I think it's going to be a lot more people that are going to appreciate the game, hold people accountable for said game, but not let it detract from their vote.
I think I think that having that strong duo and having their relationship be so clear and be so transparent for the audience, I think that is going to help them a lot if either one of them makes it to the final 2, because I think people respect how open they were about their alliance. They weren't keeping anything under wraps. They were very, very much open about it, and I personally, I think that's cute. I think that's awesome. I think I want to see them thrive. I want to see one of them at least one of them make it to the final 2, and I would definitely enjoy seeing one of them win. As much as I have been Team Alex, I could really see any of them winning and me being very happy about it.
One thing that is really important, I think, to see like the mindset people are in when they get voted out or blindsided is the last words. And I feel like they were like almost really like positive last words for everyone on the jury. There were a lot of smiles, a lot of just respect. Like Kevel got betrayed, yeah, and then he went out with a smile as he saw his name, and then was just like, yeah, respect, guys, like you got me. And I think Don had the same, like I was ready to turn on everyone. You got me first, good job. Like so, I think seeing that, I highly doubt that there'll be a bitter jury here, and I think everyone's going to focus on gameplay. And being on a jury myself in Survivor Michigan, like I know that's what I was focused on. I know there were people that were really against other people personally, but I think based on what we've seen, I don't think we're going to see that this season.
So I think Bailey hits the nail on the head. The fluidity of this season is very clear. I mean, I don't think there was a single episode where a same alliance sticks together necessarily. Like the people who stay consistently together were Faith and Emily. But in the very beginning, you had this four of Dawn, Emily, Faith, Kevel, and then they vote out Dawn right after that. And then it's Kevel, Emily, Faith, and Alex. Then they vote out Kevel. And I think the most consistent thing has been Emily and Faith. But then you also have this emergence of the trio of Girlia, of Alex, Emily, and Faith. Now, they've all made it to the final four. Do you think they're going to the final three together? Do you think that Girlia is just going to be like every other alliance they've been in and they're going to betray each other?
Is that what they're calling it?
Yeah, that's what they called it in the show.
I think Alex should turn on the others, because I think if those two, Faith and Emily, get further, that's just worse for her game. And I think Alex almost has nothing to lose, because I think Susan's just going to be the target for those two. So if Alex can almost force a tie, then that's just the best case scenario, because then it looks like she did something. She's not just another puppet for Faith and Emily. It actually looks like she did something. I don't know how much of the jury will say she did something, because we can see quite clearly she did a lot. She was jumping. She was saving her alliance. I don't know how much of the jury thinks that, just because it seems like whatever Faith and Emily wanted is what happened. And whenever they would betray Alex, Alex would just run back to them and be like, okay, we're good. So if she can just maybe force a tie, maybe just act like she did something else, it would help her a lot.
I think just the ability to take Susan to the end as a GOAT. Unfortunately, I love her and I loved her entire edit, but I just don't think especially at the final four, the ability to say, hey, Susan's here. She has not done a lot. At least if I know it's a final three, it's going to be more of like a 2-3 shot rather than a 3-3. Like it's going to be a 2-2 shot rather than a 3-3 shot. Like it's the ability to bring Susan to the end, I think is going to be too enticing for someone. I think it's either going to lead to the end of Emily versus Faith. I think most likely it'll lead to the end of Emily versus Faith, and one of the two is going home. But it could definitely bring the downfall of Alex as well, because if you're the odd person out, it could be very easy for them to just say, ferocity to the end, woo, we made it so far, and just axe everyone along the way. Axe Alex as the last victim of the ferocity powerhouse.
Yeah,
I think you. Sorry, no, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think I agree with Bailey. Susan is very enticing as someone to bring to the end, and I think it should be interesting to see, like you said, Anders, if they turn on another one of their allies, because I think Emily seems to have just as good a relationship with Susan as she does with Girlia. So I'm interested to see what they do and if they turn on them, because I think they know Alex is much bigger of a threat than Susan.
I do think the tribal council of Emily, Faith, and Alex would be amazing, and would probably be one of the most entertaining combinations in Maryland history. That would be, I think, just to have all three who have been big players and obvious big players throughout the season together, that would be definitely a huge, huge get.
Josh, do you want to say something?
Oh, no, I'm good. I don't even remember. It's been a long day.
So obviously in a final three, there would only be one vote left. And it would come down to, does Girlia stay together? Do they try to go for, is Alex the biggest threat? Is Faith the biggest threat? Is Emily the biggest threat? But if it's final two, how does that change things?
Is it final two?
Well, I asked a hypothetical question.
You looked at it.
everything.
That'd be wild.
I think that's going to be the catalyst for Emily and Faith turning on each other. I don't think it'll happen if it's a final three. I think final three is just like, okay, whatever. Like we'll see who's the best. I think if it's a final two though, it's going to come down to that final immunity challenge, and they're just going to take out the biggest threat. They don't really. Once it's final two, you just take and you win immunity. You take out the biggest threat. It's nothing else. Who is going to beat you in the game, and that would be the number one catalyst for Faith and Emily turning on each other. So I kind of hope it's going to be a final two just because of that.
I think by the end, alliances just don't really matter at that point. It's who wins immunity and who can sway somebody over their side. It's so fluid. It's at the end of the game. It's just there's no one to work with. There's nothing you can do. So you just have to work with who's there. And if nobody wants to work with you, then that's the situation you put yourself in throughout the votes in the end of this game, near the end of the game. I think if it's a final two, I believe that Emily and Faith will absolutely turn on each other, or Alex and Susan will work together to at least challenge Emily and Faith in some way. But if not, I think that Emily and Faith are going to turn on each other.
I think if they know it's final two, at final four would much more incentivize Alex and Susan to try to work together, knowing that they would have to be the lone man kind of versus this Emily Faith duo in the final three. So I'm curious to see, like, if it's the final two, when they would find out, because I feel like that would affect this final four vote and probably would have affected previous votes.
So here's another question. We've seen these players all play their own games. They've all made big moves. If you had to point out the focal point in someone's game, like where they were at their best, what they could point to as their biggest move, what would you say for each one of them? Like, when was Alex's biggest move? When was Susan's?
I think Alex's is clear. It was at the merge where it seems like Dylan was enemy number one, and she's managed to kind of leak information to like both sides, and everybody thinks she's loyal to them. And so I think at the merge especially, it's been very apparent her ability to kind of play each side and get what she wants without people knowing that she's doing it.
I think like the moment of Emily's game that solidified her as a top contender was her voting Tony in the first merge tribal council, because that she read the signs. She besides the fact that she was with people that she had not been on a tribe with previously. She was with Daniela. She voted with Daniela. She voted with Kyle. She voted with Kevin. And
You mean Dylan, not Kyle?
did I say Kyle? It's 11:30. But whatever. Either way, the fact that she was able to realize that this is the way the vote was going, and she was able to sway that vote in her direction, whatever direction she wanted for Tony, instead of voting in the minority or voting for Daniela, who was going to have or voting for, sorry, who got an idol played on them? Sorry, I have to.
It was Dylan, Dawn, Daniela, and Tony. Dawn played an idol on himself. Dylan played it on himself, and then it was Daniela and Tony that received votes.
So sticking with, if she had stuck with her like original alliance and voted with Dylan, like Daniela would have gone, and then she'd have to answer for why she voted for Dylan. But to flip onto Tony, I think really showed that she was willing to work with anyone, and she had the social capacity to worm her way in to get those plans.
So not to stop you, I mean, like, the plan, I don't know if I'm like telling you that your opinion is wrong, but the plan was she and Kev were going to vote for Tony in case Daniela and Dylan both played idols. Like, that was the plan before Drunk Tribal.
Okay.
I mean you could still say that, like, that was a smart move on her part. I'm just saying, like, it's not as if she flipped. It was like they charted out who's going to do what. Everyone knew she was going to vote not with Daniela or not vote for Daniela or Dylan. They just didn't know it was going to be Tony. And they didn't know that Daniela and Dylan were going to vote Tony as well.
I think I found my point more along the way of this whole diatribe, which was the fact that she was able to worm her way with people that she hadn't met for the first tribal into this very intricate plan, and it ended up working out in her favor. I think really showed that she had the versatility to go far in the game. So
I agree with that. Yes.
Yeah, I think what you were saying is, so like, what point can they all pinpoint? I think right now, almost nobody actually knows that Alex was the reason that Daniela and Dylan voted Tony at that first merge vote. So I think dropping that bomb would be huge because it's like something that people don't even realize. Susan, she can say she was really close with Swale and Tony, and she lost both of them, and she was able to survive and maneuver her way through. I think Faith and Emily almost had the exact same moves is their issue. Like, I can't separate the two of them, except maybe that Emily played and found two idols, whereas Faith didn't. Like, that's the only thing I can say right now that separates the two of them, which is why I really think that they need to turn on each other just because they have all the exact same moves right now. So they can't, like, they've been with each other since day one. They voted the exact same way every time, except this last tribal where Faith just threw the vote on Emily just because she knew the idol was coming out. So I think that seeing how they turn on one another, because I think they're going to have to, is going to pretty much decide their defining moment.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that Faith voted for Emily last tribal to like kind of take away this no votes for her. So I think she's already thinking ahead and like looking for ways to level the playing field, knowing that Emily already has found and played two idols.
To go back to Akshay's point, though, I do think that Emily, per what the shady editor of this show has shown us, I think that Emily has been shown to be the more social person of the duo. It feels like a lot of the times it feels like that Faith kind of comes in and just is like, I'm gonna try and win immunity, and I'll just kind of follow along with Faith, like Emily's lead. Whereas Emily, it seems like she had a hand in all of the pots of this season. She always seemed to know what was actually, like, what was going on, she had been told was going on, what she knew there was a plan of what could be going on. Like, it felt like she knew, like, she always had the social wherewithal to know where she was in the game and who everyone was going to be with for that vote. So I think that if it came down to an Emily Faith final two, I think Emily is going to be edged up for her social ability and for the fact that she won and played idols.
Emily talked to everyone before tribal. Faith just called everyone out at tribal, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
But see, you have that interesting. You make a point that like Emily was clearly with all these people. She was making these social connections. But then you see, Faith is the one that they would reach out to initially. Dawn reached out to her. Alex reached out to her. She was the first one to make contact with Dylan. And she was put as most likely to win when Dylan when Danielle and Michael were like, who do we target? We target Faith. Like, Faith has been the louder of the pair. I mean, I think that's been shown at the tribals with her talk about a dream for tribal. She just isn't afraid to say what she's thinking and how it is. The Swale tribal, the Kevel tribal, the every tribal pre-merge. It's like Faith just says what she wants. Sometimes when, she's a little bit past the point of sober, she'll be like, and Swine's on both sides, and he's going home.
Faith?
Yeah, I know. And yet, despite her being this very obvious, clear person talking, she has received what, like 2-3 votes. She's been there. And I think this is a larger question that I love to ask is, in a pair, when someone is the louder one, does that give them an advantage? Like, does it matter who's the smart one if one of them talks more? Who do you believe more?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I feel like you look at pairs a lot in Survivor between like JT Steven, Dominic Wendell, and it's always hard because when people, especially because Emily and Faith were on the same tribe the whole time, oftentimes I feel like the louder one is the one that people look at and say, oh, that clears the head of the snake. But I think there's something to be said about Emily's being more graceful. I think, tribals and challenges are less a part of the game than when like you're speaking with people outside of the game and meeting with people. And so, when Brandon and Danielle were the ones to go against that pair, they targeted Faith. And Faith was
You mean
more
Michael, not Brandon? Who are these people? Who's Kyle? Who's Brandon? What is are we am I editing incorrectly?
Excuse me, we're guessing on generic white names. Thanks.
No, but the Brandon from season 5. Well, okay.
Yeah, Brandon, Kyle, and Keith.
I mean, yeah, we'll see when they get to the. I think Emily's probably has better social bonds, but Faith is probably someone that people look at and say, "Oh, she's done more." So I'm interested to see, if they make it to Final Tribal, what the cases are, and if Emily could like really rise above.
I think Emily's gameplay has been, at least for the past few episodes, all about bringing people together, and she's played the social game really well. She's brought in Susan, which I think is gonna give her a huge advantage. If somehow the two of them make it to the final two, I think her playing the idol on Susan, I think having that idol spare and playing it on Susan is a baller move by her that I think a lot of people are gonna look at and respect. I get the sense that she's really only been using Susan for voting leverage, but I still have to respect that tactic. Whereas Faith, generally being the louder one, has gotten into more issues, like you mentioned with Swale and Michael in Tribal. And while that creates maybe for more of an entertaining Tribal series and episodes in general, I don't know if that's what people are going to look at and say, I want to vote you to be the winner of the series.
Yeah, Faith is hilarious because I feel like she'd be a nightmare to play against because, you're so used to Tribals being like a whole bunch of nothing. And then she just goes and is like, yeah, I'm voting Swale, even though we're actually voting out Tony this time, but I'm going to vote Swale because I don't trust it. And you're just like, okay, that happened. But at the same time, I really think that did annoy a lot of people because like you had Michael going, I don't really like Faith. You had Swale go like getting into a legitimate argument with Faith. Whereas with Emily, like, you've never heard a bad thing about her. Plus she had two idols. Plus she's made every move that Faith has. So it's like everything that Faith did, but like in a nicer way that people like more and want to vote for more.
Absolutely. I think that also makes her more of a target. Although I will say, like, you had people get annoyed at someone like Michael, who wasn't saying a whole lot, was just very confident, despite not being on the pulse at all. Just so wrong. But I do want to point out, like, you had these people in a power position this whole game, and no one made any moves against Emily and Faith. No one made any successful moves. Do you think, looking back on the season, do you think who's really to blame for this? Like, where was the right moment to do this? Because if Emily and Faith do make it to the final two, it's like everyone has to look at it and go, wow, it's like we knew the final two from the fucking merge. And no one did anything. Like, who's really at fault here? Was there something that could be done? Is there something that still can be done? Is it a legitimate idea that Alex and Susan could somehow take out Emily and Faith?
Well, it feels like they very much played on the sidelines while the two large empires of Dylan and Don kind of self-destructed, and that just allowed them to rise up through those ashes and become like the power players. That's the sense that I got. I think if maybe Don hadn't decided to be kind of a jackass. I mean, he seems like a nice guy, but I don't know why he did the play he did. If he hadn't decided to just go rogue, I think maybe, they would have seen that, there's these two players who, if, left to their own devices, could end up being really strong by the end. But
I was going to absolutely agree with that because I think Dylan versus Don really hid all of the winners. Whoever's going to win was hidden by Dylan versus Don because for 3 votes, that was all anyone could talk about, and no one said anything. Like, no one would even bring up anything else. It was always, are you on Dylan's side or are you on Don's side? And by the time Don left, and then that wasn't the narrative anymore. Emily and Faith are no longer just a duo who could be a threat. They're we have 2 obvious votes right here ready to go, and we like them both. Like, I think people will say duos are threats just as like a blanket term, but if they're threats and if people don't like them enough to keep them in the game, then they're not threats. The fact that they were both able to socially keep themselves in the game as a duo full of a game of freelancers says a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if it's anyone's fault specifically. I think the Dylan versus Don thing had a huge thing to do with it. I think the fact that Swale and Kevel both came off as so sketchy for so much of the game. People were just like, okay, we're tired of these people, get rid of them. And then you had Michael just finding every way to annoy people humanly possible by just being Michael. And Daniela just being on the exact wrong side of the vote seemingly every single time. So it's just kind of like there was always a different target. There was always a bigger target seemingly that everyone wanted to go after. And that's what led to this last episode where, you know, thank you for it, honestly, Anders, like for not boring us and wasting our time and just fitting these two boring ass tribals into one really quick episode that we can just move on from. And, you know, it's like there wasn't even a question on who was going home. It was these two. And I feel like that's what a lot of it was. And because of that, Faith and Emily were just like, all right, we're not the biggest targets. Even though we're a duo, somehow we're still not the biggest targets. So keep moving.
Yeah, but I mean, I was getting frustrated in like these last episodes because I feel like they're like so clearly kind of running things, and maybe there always been bigger targets ahead of them. But like to your question, I think to pinpoint where like there could have been a move made, I would say final 7, where you had like Daniela and Michael voting for Faith. I feel like when you look at the challenge, Emily after that challenge found 2 idols, and one of them was from a clue that she got from Alex for winning the challenge, and one of them was a clue that was shared for her by Alex that she found in her list of names. So I feel like if Alex gives her clue to Dylan, or if she keeps her clue that she finds to herself, those idols could easily be out of Emily's hands, and they could easily make a move there. So I feel like if there's any place where you can make a move, the Alex Dylan trio duo joining up with the weaker Michael Daniela duo and trying to make a move there would have been ideal.
I think Alex just hated Michael so much. I think they just got on each other so much. There was no way that was going to happen.
I mean, it also speaks to Emily and Faith's game, per Zachary's point. The fact that nobody made a move on like Alex and them didn't make a move on them when right after blindsiding Kevel. Like that would have been such an easy like, oh well, tit for tat, we're gonna come for you since you took out one of our own without telling us, especially after making an alliance with us. The fact that they were able to save face speaks to how well Emily and Faith have both played this game. And I think that speaks to the reason why they're all both still here is they were able to talk their way into the Final Four.
Yeah, and I think something else to point out there is at Final 7 you have, okay, this is a chance for Dylan and Alex to flip. But then you look who they're going to flip to, which is Daniela, who multiple times has just been shown she is unpredictable and very quick to just go off. And Michael, who, despite having good instincts, I love him, but God, it's like, do you go with these two people who are a little bit more unpredictable, or do you go with who you trust? And I think that's where Alex struggled, because although they voted out her ally, it was like, why go with the 2 votes she cannot trust?
But I mean, Emily and Faith were able to go with Daniela and Michael. They took that chance, and it's worked out for them. Like ultimately, there's no easy path to the end of Survivor. It's risk. It's weighing risk versus reward. Staying with Emily and Faith was a safer option, 100%. But does safe help you win? It doesn't always. I think that Emily and Faith being able to work with somebody like Daniela and Michael, formulate a plan, and then just cut them the next 2 votes after they didn't need them anymore, speaks to how much better their games were, frankly, than Alex's.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, the way they take risks also seems to be they take risks in a very safe way for them, if that makes sense. That's what I've been getting from them. I feel like those moves where they need to, have some interaction with other people, they're always on a winning side. They always have the odds in their favor, and that really speaks to, again, like Bailey was saying, their level of gameplay just being a little bit ahead of a lot of the others, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, and the fact that there always been like 2 votes and 2 heads, making this decision has kind of helped them in the way that, they were aligned with Dawn and flipped on Dawn, and they flipped on Kevel. But the fact that they were always loyal to each other kind of made them still come off as these, nice, loyal people, whereas they were, just as kind of going with the flow and changing the votes as, anyone else, as Kevel, who was, ousted because they felt like he was a flip-flopper.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the people who didn't make it to the finale. Our jurors. Is there anyone in the jury who you think, with a slight modification of game, could have made it here? Anyone who potentially could have won? Obviously, it's hard because it's like they have a fragmented game, but it's hard to say that they didn't earn their spots and they weren't players. I mean, they're all guys except for Daniela. So there's no queens. I mean, there's Queen Daniela, but like beyond that, all the queens are out pre-merge.
I think if Daniela hadn't have blindsided Shayna early in the game, I think that she would not have had as sketchy of a persona within the cast as she did. I believe if she had, obviously, Dylan probably would not have been happy with her challenging the vote, but if like, at least it's like, hey, I had an alliance, I stuck to my guns, and I'm willing to stick with that. And that would have proved her as a more loyal ally. But for her to just jump right onto the Kyle train right away,
Dylan.
Jesus Christ. Dylan, right away, did not help her in any way, shape, or form.
I'd be interested to see if Michael was playing from day one, because I think he really came on strong late, and I think people kind of resented him late just because they felt like he wasn't doing anything to get there. So I'd be interested to see if he was as invested as everybody else from day one, because he seemed like a nice, charismatic guy. So I feel like if he was playing hard from day one, I'd be interested to see if he could have made more bonds and possibly made it farther.
Base Squad winning immunity was probably the best and worst thing for Michael's game, because it allowed him to go far, but it also allowed him to do nothing with going far.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was also the best and worst thing for all the Ferocity members. I think what was made early on is true. The more times you go to Tribal, the closer you get. You keep voting people out, but like you had the 6 Ferocity members at the swap trust each other much more implicitly than any of the Base Squad did. Even the ones who were in an alliance, i.e. Don and Taylor.
I think a couple of guys. I think Swale, because his maneuvering of the pre-merge part of this game was fantastic. He weaseled his way out of seemingly every single vote by Swalang at Tribal, and it was just absolutely brilliant. And I think right at merge, all of a sudden it was everyone caught on to his game. So I think maybe if Tony doesn't go home at that first merge Tribal, I think Swale can actually go much further. He has his troops in Michael, Tony, and Susan, who I think are all trusting him more than anyone else in the game. And I think they can really do some damage. I even think Kevel could have actually done a lot had he not flipped from Dylan to Don as fast as he did. It was almost the same thing that Daniela just got called out for. She flipped so early. Kevel flipped so early into merge after being fully Dylan the entire pre-merge that it was like, okay, well, we can't trust him at all, and he's got to go. And I think that's what caused Faith and Emily to turn on him so fast.
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately Kevel was robbed of a lot of screen time for not filming himself, but I think he was a very strategic player, and I think he did flip-flop, but he managed to be in those majorities, even despite the fact that you have these two sides, and he was literally aligned with both of them in the closest way. They didn't trust him, but they trusted him enough to be a part of the decision-making. And then he's so clearly involved that he has to be taken out.
I also got that Brown connection with him, so that's a little more personal.
Are there any pre-merge people who could have made it all the way? I know we're all rooting for Meredith. If only she had survived that first vote, she could have been the Emily. You like what?
I liked Thomas. I thought Thomas was a cool guy, but I don't really remember anything about his gameplay. Liked him though. Seemed nice.
Oh, you know who we're forgetting? The queen of all queens, Nakami.
Me.
No, I like the belt.
Name I couldn't remember from Base Squad consistently.
I like the belt. I think he had like a lot of good tools. I think I got overconfident. He went to tribal so many times. He was like 2 for 2, and then I think the outcast finally rose up. But I think he was the one out of like all the pre-merge players who was blindsided, but also was like very into the game. And it's like those type of people that often have like a lot of game left to play.
Wait, Anders, why was Abel at that challenge?
Why was Abel? I was like when he was voted out.
Yeah.
You're talking about the poll challenge. I needed
poll
someone to
challenge.
film. And
Just
well, I needed someone to film, and he offered to. I asked the pre-merge players. And here's some hot goss. Basically, people were annoyed with Abel because he had like one day at the bar been like, Emily, I could have taken you to the final 2. And so Emily loved to make the joke, what final 2? You got voted out in 14th place or whatever. It's like, I mean, she's not wrong. But I knew that everyone like had that interaction with Abel at some point. Faith and Emily had worked with him and voted him out. Alex had worked with him and that had exploded. Dylan was almost coerced to throw a challenge. Susan, wanted to keep him and then immediately flipped. And then Michael had no relation, but like, everyone else was feeling away, and Michael's like, me too. So it was just, I wanted to take an opportunity to play a little joke, be a little prankster.
I think Abel was such a snake, and I'm glad he went when he did. He's playing every single side of the die, I respect that to a point, but I just think he was I just felt slimy whenever I would watch him work his magic, because I think he's a really strong player, but you can't just be a strong player. I think you have to be likable. And once people saw that he was just playing every side, I think it was over for him, and I think he deserved to go.
Well, that's what's crazy too, is he was a liar constantly, but he was right. He was totally right. Like when they were sitting in the stairwell, it was very clear. He's like, whoever did it, best up, Faith, whoever did it. And it's like, Faith, I don't know if this was just obvious to me because I knew, or if it was obvious to everyone. Faith is a terrible liar in that moment. She's just like, yeah, it wasn't me. But somehow Abel, despite telling the truth, is sketchier than the liar. Don't get me wrong, he imploded from there. I think it only went downhill. But I mean, Abel was telling the truth, and they didn't believe him. The boy who cried wolf.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was really funny because right after that conversation, you switched right to a confessional going, it's so obvious, like from Emily going, it's so obvious Abel is lying and Faith is telling the truth. And I was just like, well, that's ironic. I think it was the one time Emily had a terrible grasp on the game, but it worked out. She turned that into a positive. She took out Abel and turned it into a 6, and that carried her through the rest of the game. But I think one queen we're all forgetting is Shayna. I really wish Shayna had stayed in the game because she was one of my favorite just personalities to watch pre-merge. Favorite personality from Base Squad. Really sad that she got turned on by Daniela.
I agree, 100%.
Same.
Yeah, Don also agrees with that.
And Don obviously was a strong player who probably could have made it at least farther than he had if he hadn't self-destructed like that. So,
what about Taylor? How do we feel about Queen Taylor? I get. Don't get me wrong, Shane is a queen, but so is Taylor. How do we feel about it?
It's weird because the way it was edited in the show, it was kind of like the first sign that anything went wrong, Taylor was like, okay, I'm running to Dylan, and then that was it. And then she was gone. And like that was the extent of our entire knowledge on Taylor. But I feel like she was a much stronger player than that. She just kind of screwed herself over.
Taylor just felt like Knock Me Deluxe in the show. Like it was just like okay, you did things. You at least like showed up and did more, but it never really felt like any of the things that Taylor was doing were actually panning out to even short-term gameplay. So I don't think that there's really any reason that Taylor needs to be remembered. That's really bitchy.
Wow. I mean, she shouldn't win. I think she should be forgotten, like all the other shitty players, like Carla.
You can't remember every single player in every season. You have to have duds because otherwise everyone's going to be pissed when someone goes home. So, I think Taylor was a boot. Like that was the boot. That's who needed to go in that moment, and I think Taylor was a good boot for that. And
I think I can speak for all of us when I say we remember Kevin way, way better than we remember Taylor. I mean, he was a great guy.
You mean Kevel?
People have been saying Kevin instead of Dylan a bunch.
No, that was Kyle.
You had to be there on the call.
We just created another white name. Kevin doesn't exist.
So okay. Before we get to the very end of this, who do we think should come back for another season? Obviously, at this point, everyone who's come back has come back. Like I've already filmed it all, but I want to hear it anyways. Who do you guys think should come back?
I need more Swally and Tony in my life. I need it.
Yep, 100%.
I feel
Yeah,
like when it happens in Faith's game from here on out, like she'll do even better in a second chance. So I definitely say Faith, probably Daniela, probably I'd like to see somebody like Shayna represented at the beginning of the season, maybe a Belle, and Kyle and Dawn probably.
Gotta love Kyle, man.
Not
Damn it.
Oh, was that again an accident? I thought you were making a joke.
No, that was not actually.
It was Kyle.
I need to go.
Bailey's in journalism, so he has to remember a lot of things. Just not names, I guess.
And I have to be up at 5:30. Oh,
It's only 9 here.
it's 12:10 here. Maybe.
For the audience, Anders made us wait a very long time.
Oh yeah.
So we're all
She-
wait.
She knew I only had like a limited amount of time to talk to, so. Yeah.
Okay, so final guesses. I'm gonna give you guys. Who do you think the final 3 is gonna be? Who do you think the final 2 would be? And who do you think will win? Because you don't know. I know, but you don't.
Let's see. I think it's going to be. I think Emily, Alex, and Susan will be the final 3. I think Emily and Susan will be the final 2, and I think Emily wins.
Mm-hmm.
I'm similar. I'm Emily, Faith, and Susan as final 3. Emily and Susan final 2. Emily wins.
Yeah, I'm the exact same as Akshay. I think they'll take out Alex as the biggest threat, 4th if she doesn't win immunity. And then if there's a final 2, I think whoever wins that challenge I think Susan, if she wins, will take Emily, and whoever wins out of Emily and Faith will take Susan. So I think Emily has the best odds of making it with Susan and Emily winning.
I would agree. That's the scenario that I could most likely see happen.
Wow, I'm gooped right now. The first live show, everyone's like, Alex is gonna win, and this one, she didn't even make it to final 3.
I love Alex. I
I
said, I would love Alex to win, but I don't see it happening.
I definitely for a long time thought for sure Alex was gonna win, but I actually don't see her winning anymore. Like, because she would need to get to the end with Susan. If she can somehow get to the end with Susan, she wins. But I don't see that happening.
Yeah,
Alex has run out of punch spots on her Yogurtland card. It's just not happening.
I feel like she took trying to make it farther over, trying to make a big move and seeing if she could win, or maybe she didn't take the risk and she kind of played it safe with Emily and Faith, and I think it's gonna hurt her.
And that's our sitcom. Played it safe with Emily and Faith. Well, I want to thank you all for coming on and doing this. I tried to make it quicker because you guys are little babies. Oh, I have to sleep. I need to be healthy. Lame. Jesus. So, if there's anything else you want to say, you can do it now. Anything?
Yeah, everyone watch the Survivor Michigan season 1 finale this Friday. It's gonna be fantastic. I promise you.
Anders, I have a question. If it wasn't your first day, would you have vetoed Base Squad?
Yeah, if I could go back and do anything, it would be making them both pick good names.
Yeah.
You know what? Look, not every name's perfect, but
Like Anders.
Bay Squad. Oh, that's
Oh.
so cute, Bailey. That's hilarious.
Thank you.
Anyways, yeah, Bay Squad's a terrible name. I'm just glad there's only one of them left because I was over them day one.
Go watch
Moment.
me be a jerk on Survivor Reelfoot season 2, and then go watch Anders be a joke for 2 episodes of Survivor Reelfoot season 3. And
To be clear, there are only 2 episodes out, so it's not as if I get voted out in the second episode. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. He's not. I'm just saying. Don't think that I'm a joke because I'm only in 2 episodes. There have only been 2, so if anything, I'm in 100% of the episodes
Andrews, what was your favorite moment of the season?
of this season. Watching it back, it was Drunk Tribal because I think it's so ridiculous. Living it, that was the worst moment. Living it, my favorite moment was the Kevo blindside because it was. Well, my favorite moment hasn't happened yet. Ooh, but my favorite moment was the Kevo blindside because I think it didn't translate too well to the camera, but like it was very much last minute. Like literally, you saw them texting right there. Like I was watching them. They're just like, okay, fucking Michael, Daniela, can we do this? And I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen. Someone's getting blindsided. Yeah. And then Josh, Zach, anything?
I mean, I was wondering if it's harder to show the ebbs and flows of like a Survivor round because people are only doing like one confessional a week, and often it's towards the end. So I was thinking because when I played, I would always make confessionals like the day of the tribal. So like I feel like a lot of the early pre-merge votes seemed pretty like straightforward. Like there wasn't even a second name, but I feel like maybe is that because like there's just not a lot of confessionals to choose from?
No, I think that the way I do confessionals is very much streamlined with like, tell me the story of what happened this week as it happens. The reason it's so streamlined in the show, like the reason why it's so obvious is because when you're on Ferocity and you have people like Matt, when you have people like Abel, it's like you don't need a lot of discussion because there isn't a second idea. It's like this person is so obviously the target. In other seasons, it's not as clear, but in the very beginning of these votes, it's always culling the people who don't fit in. That happens with every show. Michigan, I mean, no offense, love Michigan. First couple episodes, cannot remember any of their names at this point, like because they were just like they didn't fit in, and you knew it.
Yeah, the Maison tribals were all really boring.
Someone just asked, "Am I gay?" And nope, straight as an arrow. What gave it away? Let's see. All right. Well, what?
Where's that chat?
You have to go to the YouTube page and look. You missed it. They've said so many nice comments about you, Josh. Like, what a cutie. I love his hair. I bet he's a great singer.
Come on, stop it, you guys. Come on.
Oh, this was live?
Wait, are we on YouTube?
Anders, if you could have joined the season as one of the contestants, do you think you would have won?
Oh,
This
No.
season. I always wanted to play Survivor Maryland. Maybe I do, but could I have won the season? I don't think I could have. Because I'm not a girl, and I think that the girls were very strong, and I think that the fact that they made a girls' alliance, I think, was always going to happen. It's just, could I have been in the Dylan position? Maybe. I just don't think I could have won. And that's just. I would have just gotten 11th place like I normally do. It would have been great.
Oh, Anders, one more thing. Like your editing where you added like the kind of GTA like wasted and where you added this space. Those are the things that like you remember when you watch a season. So thank you so much for those kind of moments when we were watching them.
Oh my god, thank you. Austin hated those. So
They were hilarious.
Austin doesn't like it. Austin doesn't like fun. Hi Austin.
He's gone to a better place, so who cares?
It's true. He's old now. He's like 25. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you all for watching. Finale will be next week. I promise. But seriously, thank you. It's been a great season. Maybe we'll do an after finale show. Who's to say? I don't know yet. All right. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
All right.